these numbers look great, but if you aren't careful about it, you can still lose money. And that's where people just getting into this business can't think about it as instant income because it just doesn't work that way.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
Hello and welcome to episode 62. My guest today is Steve Ferris, the co-owner of Sigma Properties. And Steve, along with his father, have been investors in single-family and multifamily properties since 1995. They own single-families and multifamilies in both Grand Rapids and Muskegon. They're buy-and-hold investors. Steve, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Now, you have an interesting background because it really has nothing to do with real estate. You have an art history background with a degree from U of M, University of Michigan. How did you go from art history to real estate?
Well, after I graduated from Michigan, I ended up with a job at the Grand Rapids Art Museum and enjoyed my time there, did a little bit of everything. At the same time, we started investing in buildings around 95. I did a single family house myself.
So this 1995.
I'm trying to remember. I think that's the year that we bought and flipped that house.
Okay, so you're in Grand Rapids.
We're in Grand
you bought
Rapids.
And flipped that. Whereabouts in Grand Rapids?
That was on the west side. Mm-hmm. And for people who aren't familiar with the area, it was mostly factory housing, all sorts of housing types scattered in. It's quite popular now, or becoming. Yeah, but it was just a stable neighborhood, just a house. Mm-hmm. And I was 24, 25.
Why would an art history major were you working at the art museum in Grand Rapids? Why would you even think to flip a house?
I enjoy art, and I still do, and I enjoyed my time there. But even growing up, my dad always he always bought cars. We'd fix them up and sell them. We dabbled in anything. So the household was buying and selling all the time. So it's in the history, So it's a car, it's a house, it's a piece of furniture, whatever.
It's taking that model of buying something that's undervalued, fixing it up, and selling it for more than you put into it.
So my background in art, I was even buying, interesting furniture pieces, fixing up and selling again, before that. I enjoy that. Finding it is fun and selling it's fun. So it just kind of transferred to houses at some point.
Okay, so you did this first flip. What was that like for you?
It was a disaster house that an old guy had died in, and all his stuff was behind. We had, 2 giant dumpster loads just trying to clean it out. I hired another teacher friend of my dad's, and his sons came in. We cleaned the place out, remodeled it, and it looked great, and of course made no money. So, but it was a good lesson on how to do a house. And that kind of, got it started. I don't even remember how we found that house. It just kind of happened one day. That's how those things come up in our family. We can switch gears very quickly. Mm-hmm.
Did you get the bug then? Did you say, I'd like to do this again?
That probably started it, but I was always looking at stuff. And what really started the investing was in 96, my aunt died and left all of her relatives, including my dad, myself, a chunk of money. And we were kind of thinking about what to do with it. I was thinking, maybe we'll buy a 4-unit and I'll live in it. That seemed to make some sense. And in the end, within the year, we bought a 12-unit, and that we shouldn't have bought and needed all sorts of work. So we dove into that and did everything wrong.
What guided your decision making? I mean, what did you know about investing in multifamily at that point that made you say, well, let's buy this 12-unit? Or was it just more of that mentality of let's buy it, fix it up, and do something with it?
Okay, well, we were always good with numbers. So we were playing the numbers on it, thinking how it would cash flow, how it could make money, thinking about over the long scheme. It was a good investment. We started working around the same time, worked with a management company, and they were kind of helping us guide it through the process too. And as we bought it, they took it over. So we started with the guidance of a management company. At some point along the way, we're like, we need a little more professional help, taking on something a little bigger than we knew what we were doing on. So, and they continued to work with us too as we bought that building, tried to do everything ourselves. We were doing our own painting and shouldn't have done that. We know now.
Was this why you had a full-time job?
Oh yeah. So so we worked all day.
Still working
and then
at the art
in the
museum.
evenings. Yeah, working the evenings on the building. trying to clean it up and turn it. And we did.
Where was this 12 unit?
On Michigan Street in Grand Rapids.
So Michigan and what?
Michigan between Plymouth and Fuller.
Okay, which is a good area.
And we still own it. It's a good area.
You still own it, okay.
And I'm glad we still own it because it came with a whole acre of property behind. So now we've got this nice 2-acre chunk on Michigan Street, which I'm glad to have now, but it wasn't so great, 20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago, who would have thunk that Michigan Street would be taken off the way it is?
Yeah.
So I think you said something like it turned out to be a disaster, or
no, it wasn't. It just was, we didn't know what we were doing. As I said, trying to, the apartments took way too long to flip and they sit vacant and we didn't.
You mean turn like it?
Yeah, just turning apartment. Of course, now we know we do it quickly. It's lost income, but oh my gosh, if you're trying to do it after work or paint
doing
the
it yourself,
it just wasn't a good idea. And doing way too nice a job on some things that didn't pay off. And,
what kind of rents were you getting back then?
I remember it was under 500. It was for $450, $425 for about
one bedroom.
About 800 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath.
Okay.
And I remember when he broke the 500 number, we were excited. So, and that apartment now rents for about $950.
Okay.
So
you've doubled your rent.
Yeah, and a lot of time went past as well.
20 years. How long did it take you to get your bearings on that 12 unit? I mean, it sounds like you brought in professional management at some point, but were you still insisting on doing a lot of the work yourself?
We did. And, I guess, it makes sense now, but you don't think about the, the opportunity costs about doing it yourself. The lost time of painting yourself and having it sit for a month or trying to rent it yourself. That's where, like I mentioned, we've tried all sorts of management and do ourselves, management company, back to ourselves, back to a management company over the years. And it makes way more sense to let somebody else handle it just because you can move it so quickly. And so, at the time, a $500 apartment, it sits vacant for a couple months, that $1,000, you could have had somebody else do the work, get it back in the market faster, and, you haven't done the labor and you could do something else.
Yeah, you may save the money by doing it yourself, but time is money. Your time is money.
Absolutely.
And not just that, but the time that it sits vacant longer than it should, that's a big waste of money.
Right. We started right out with a management company, and a few years in, I was thinking about maybe leaving the museum, doing this full time. At that point, we bought another 12 unit. We were looking at expanding into other things. I thought, well, this is fun. I'm enjoying this. I'll leave my full-time job and do this work.
So you were up to 24 units at this point?
We were up to 24 at that point, and that was bringing enough income in where I could replace my income and manage.
So just the cash flow alone,
the cash flow at the time
between the 24 units was equal to the income you were making at the art museum.
Right. And it seemed to be a good move. So I did that. And, there's a few things you can forget about. It's
wait, let's stop right there. So I'm thinking in your mind, you were probably thinking, well, if just the cash flow right now with a third-party management company in place is meeting my income, I can quit, focus on managing the property myself, and make even more money.
Right.
That was probably your thinking.
That was the thought process.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what happened?
It went fine for a while, but it slowly starts to catch up with you where, like non-collectibles is a great example. I'm a little bit too nice where it comes to those who don't pay rent. So we'd end up with a few that didn't pay. And next thing you know, I'm knocking on doors trying to collect. And
what were some of those conversations like?
It's funny, you probably have too. I've heard every sob story, true or not, over the years. And when you start hearing the same exact stories again from people, you start to stop believing. But I'm a sucker. So I'd get sucked into that. There was even a point where to get people to leave, to get the apartment back, instead of going through the whole process, you can even, come on, we'll just forgive it, just walk away, and of course, paying the attorney was expensive. You're paying all the fees just yourself. With a management company, they can group it together and do it quickly. And so our non-collectibles were getting pretty high each year. And it's interesting, when we switched over, that was one of the major factors that you don't even consider, you're managing yourself, as the people who don't pay. That alone almost paid the management fees, the non-collectible rent, and someone else is doing the work.
Right. And was it because the management company was able to collect that rent, or because they put in tenants who weren't
No, I think we screened pretty
Putting you
well,
in that
but they were
position.
able to collect it. People like could never get to mail in money, all of a sudden were. Tougher, maybe more regulations in place, something that they could handle better than I could myself. You think you can handle everything and you quickly learn that you cannot. I can do some things well, but handling, showing apartments, collecting rent, managing all of the maintenance issues that come up, you can't do all of it well yourself.
Did you quit your job? You bought the 24 units. You thought, I'll quit my job. I'll manage myself.
I did.
So you had quit your job at that
Right.
point.
So I haven't, worked for someone else since 2000.
Wow. Let's talk about that because, obviously real estate, just with 24 units, which is, wow. I mean, I when I got up to 24 units, I certainly wasn't able to quit my job. I mean, I just wasn't getting that cash flow yet. But you obviously bought right. I mean, even though you may have made some mistakes along the way, you definitely bought right.
We did, and that's a big factor. We even now looking at something we're purchasing, for one, always think about immediate cash flow because nothing always goes as expected, and I always think about an exit strategy. Is this something that we could back out of again if we had to? That somebody else could purchase. Always thinking about those factors going in will help you make a good investment, so you can cash flow.
Mm-hmm. And real estate has allowed you to do some things or to live a life that's a little different than what you expected.
Right.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, well, we can start off where I left my job and was managing the properties. And then we ended up getting another management company a few years later. When I had mentioned it wasn't as seamless as I thought doing it myself. But I got married in the meantime as well. And when that happened, we lived off her income. So that was easy. We still weren't worried.
So your wife had a good job?
Right. She had a good job and benefits.
She got the benefits
and all
and
that. So that was great. So that was very simple. And then, so we just, again, used the management fees and they took it. I wasn't really taking much of a draw, some, but not as much as I was. And the thing is, you never know what comes down the road. So let's see, what year are we now? Around, let's say we're 06 or so. That's about when the real estate market started to go down. I know the recession hit everybody else around 08, but 06 or so is when people were buying houses they couldn't afford and were not renting apartments.
So that had an impact.
That had a big
on your
impact because we were dropping rent on apartments and making them really nice and offering all sorts of amenities, trying to attract good renters back in. So that kind of changed our philosophy on investing too. When you start hitting a downturn like that, and of course, 08, 09 weren't good for anyone. As things started to pick up a little bit, during that time, we started to buy some houses that were still cheap, and we're starting to pick up on investing again. And my wife ended up getting sick. She had a brain tumor, and it didn't go as well as expected. She ended up mentally and physically disabled and could no longer work. And this was 2011 now, where she had a surgery and has not worked since. So that changed our investing strategy again, where early on I'd mentioned we didn't worry about paying them off, didn't worry about how much cash flow. We were just trying to amass more property. Now we try to keep our loan to value at 50 to 60%, figure you can weather any storm at that. Are thinking about paying off faster. The last commercial loan, we tried to accelerate it a little bit so I can get those things paid off. I see that as retirement income now, more than I saw as just collecting property.
Mm-hmm. So just as the economy was improving and the rental property, occupancy was improving, life threw you and your wife a curveball.
It did. We were just thinking of moving and maybe renovating a different house. And we both were very busy. She was a very active person, and she just got a big roadblock thrown in front of her, and we all did. Mm-hmm. And so we had a couple houses we were just renovating that I turned over to someone else to finish, and we focused on her. And we continue to focus on her. She cannot be left alone. So I feel pretty fortunate that this was the business we ended up getting into, where we could turn things over full time to the management company. My dad has picked up more of the paperwork we don't have a whole lot since they run most things, the management company, and I can step away and take care of my wife.
Yeah.
And it's I can still, we're still buying things. I said just more outside the Grand Rapids area, which is a little bit too hot a market now. But I can't do all of it. I can only do bits and pieces.
Yeah.
So it's hard to schedule.
But the good thing is that real estate gives you the flexibility to kind of juggle all these different things.
I feel really fortunate that we had this real estate, and this is the job we do where you can do that.
Let's talk about your dad, because you and your dad are partners.
Yes, we are.
Talk about how that works and how you share responsibilities.
Okay. Like I said, our family was pretty close anyway, and the idea of buying stuff and selling for profit was always there anyway. And he's a retired teacher and high school counselor, and he was looking for something to do as well. And it made sense that we do this together. Hey, why don't we buy something together? We can do it together, and that'd be fun. And it's been fun for us, for 20 years. And so we talk every day. We bounce ideas off each other. And it's funny because we know each other so well now that, even like, say, turning a house. So it's going to cost this much. And he's going to be probably half what the amount I came up with. And the dollar amount's always somewhere in between, just about halfway. So we know, we kind of laugh and go, yeah, that means it's going to be this number. And it's a good relationship.
Which of you is more conservative?
He's a little more conservative on his numbers than I am. I'd say I'm more realistic on my numbers.
So talk about growing your portfolio together with your dad. I mean, you had the 24 units.
Right. We bought the first 12, then we bought another 12, and then we bought a 28, and then
a 28 unit.
A 28 unit, and then we bought a
Where
third.
was this one?
That one is on the corner of Plainfield and Knapp.
Okay.
And then we bought. So let's say we bought the 12 really in '96. We bought the next 12 in '98. We bought the 28 in 2000. We bought another 36 in 2003. And we were
in 2003?
I think it was 2003, 2004, just about the time I got married. The 2003 probably. And we were on that path, kind of buying, and it was easy. We'd use the economy was growing. We used the equity from the buildings before, to pay for the next one. And it all kind of worked. But then it was around, like I mentioned earlier, around 2006 when things started to not go as well as they were. And we stopped buying.
In 2006, how many properties did you have?
We had about 76.
Okay, so you were up to 76. And in 2006, things you could tell things were going
right. Well, that's where rents were decreasing. Quality of tenants was decreasing. A lot of vacancies.
So you had some lean times.
It was lean times. Yeah. And
but during that period, you had your wife's income to fall back on.
Right. I was not really drawing income, so that wasn't a financial concern for us. It was a concern for the business, but it wasn't affecting our life because we had her income. And in 2008, 2009, we actually sold something. It was the only thing we really sold, aside from that first flip house we did. We sold the second 12 unit. It just made sense to sell that. And I was surprised that we had a really good buyer during that time that wanted to buy it. I know it's strange, so we kept things up really well, and we always did. So, and that did help shore things up to sell that. And of course, then we went through times which, the bank wanted to retalk about our loans, which of course the value on everything dropped. Said, well, your loans are out of whack. Well, we didn't do anything different except the economy.
You were still paying your mortgage.
Oh, yeah. Everything was fine except our loan to value was out of whack because the value had dropped.
So what was that conversation like?
They wanted some money put back in to shore things up. And so we did that. Luckily, we had still some cash to do that. And we had a friend who was a hard money lender. So we took some of that to quickly shore things back up.
So you had to scramble a little bit.
We did scramble a bit.
Satisfy the bank.
And we thought about selling, but we'd have lost money on that. So we shored things back up and just ran things lean for a while. And as things turned, we could, go back in and fix those things. Some maintenance we had deferred for a while. Maybe something needed a roof or a parking lot needed repaving. Just put that off for a while until times were better.
Wow. So that was probably a good 3-4 year period where you had to run pretty lean.
Right, I was. And toward the end of that time, actually someone in our group too had mentioned, why aren't you buying houses? They're so cheap, and now I wish I bought more.
Yeah.
So we did. So we at least bought a handful of houses before my wife started to have problems.
What kind of houses were you buying?
Just single family, 2 to 3 bedroom, 1 bath.
Picking them up with cash?
Just picking them up, picking them up with cash. And we'd buy them with cash first and then go back and refinance them. We'd buy them, fix them up, new roof, new kitchens, get them looking really good so we wouldn't have to worry about it at all for the future. And just about every time we were able to refinance it for more than we had into it. So it turned out to be free. And we'd set them up on a 10-year payoff. And they just simply, the money would go in the account and come back out of the account. And it was an easy investment for us.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're in the process of paying them down.
Yeah. So now they just have a few years left on that group of houses.
And then you'll own them free and clear.
Right. Right.
Great. How would you compare? I mean, you've done multifamily apartments,
Right.
and single families. I certainly have my preference between the two, but you seem to be.
Well, it's funny
doing
because
both.
we wanted nothing to do with houses, and we were only, buying multifamily apartment, built as apartments, and we figured that was the only way to go. Economies of scale. But then once we started buying houses, I was shocked how easy they were to run. You find a good renter. They do the lawn, the snow. And sometimes even fix their own things.
The utilities.
I didn't expect that. People going into a multifamily expect to have everything cared for. So it was a whole different type of renter.
So it was a little bit easier.
It was
with
easier.
a single
Not
family.
all what I expected. So,
I guess as long as you're in a good neighborhood and
Right.
you have a good renter who's
Right.
going to stay for a couple of years at least.
right, and that's something we're very careful about.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a house that we could sell again. That each house I look at, I could live here. It looks fine to me. A house that would be appealing to someone wanting to rent it.
What
So-
neighborhoods were you buying in?
Outskirts of downtown. We did buy one in Wyoming, but all in an area that would be appealing, close to town, maybe close to a bus stop, maybe cute yard, good floor plan, nothing odd. Again, I talked about exit strategy. I know any of those houses we could probably sell and somebody would like to buy.
Are you still buying single families? Because I understand you're in Muskegon as well.
We are. Well, the Grand Rapids market is, like I said, mentioned, really hot. So there aren't really great deals to find here, but we've been purchasing houses in Muskegon, which is about a half hour, 40 minutes from Grand Rapids.
Yeah,
on the lakeshore.
we've had some conversations about Muskegon.
Okay.
Lakeshore community.
Yeah.
Where you can still pick houses up for how much?
It depends, but a couple months ago, we bought a great little 2-bedroom, 1-bath, attached garage for $29,000.
$29,000.
I know, which rents
2-bedroom,
immediately
1
for
bath.
$695. So the numbers are good. That's a good example. So something that sells for $30 that would rent, we figure 2% of the purchase price or price into it per rent as a rental, like purchase it for $30, rent for $600. That's a great quick rule of thumb I look at, like that'll work.
Yeah. So I've had this conversation before. You like the 2%. A lot of people talk about the 1% rule, where if you buy it for $100,000, you want to get $1,000 in rent every month. You like the 2% rule.
I do.
If you buy it for $100,000, you want $2,000.
Right.
Rent.
It's very conservative, but again, I know if that number works, it'll work. It won't be a problem. We could always back out of it, and there's no way to find anything in that with those numbers in Grand Rapids anymore. And I'm shocked we're still finding things like that in Muskegon.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and how many do you have in Muskegon now?
Just 5 houses.
Okay, 5
We
houses.
just started buying about a year and a half ago.
All right,
And
so you're in it
slowly-
long enough to know, is it working? I mean, are you making these returns that...
Yeah, it is working. And we bought a whole different mix of things. One house, which is almost too nice for a rental, but it's a great house, and it's something maybe we could, spin off. A couple others that are just great houses, great rentals. Things, again, the management company, we talk about how useful they are.
Well, you were with Kathy, right?
With Kathy.
At Lighthouse
Kathy. Property Management. And they do a great job for us. And really, if she wasn't, they have an office in Muskegon now, so that changed everything. And probably have lots of other investors like us that are buying things there too. But without their help and their office, finding things and making it work, I wouldn't be doing that. I really need their guidance and help to make it work. I'm still looking at things for sale online all the time, but the deals that really come through them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've had this conversation before about working with a good third-party professional management company, because a lot of people argue, well, you should manage yourself. But if you're working as a team with your management company, they can be very instrumental in helping you find your next deal.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that Kathy I know is good at is working with her investors to help them find some really good deals in Muskegon.
Yeah, she is, and her broker Nicole. I got an email last night from them. Hey, there's a house that could work for you. So I'm trying to figure when I can scoot out there and look at it. I was almost going to just buy it sight unseen. I thought, no, you have to at least look. So but it's starting to dry up a little bit out there.
Is it?
It was pretty plentiful for a while, and they're not quite so much anymore. So I see that market.
Is there a lot of
better.
competition out there now?
More so all the time.
Yeah, probably. Because I've had too many people talk about it.
They're all listening to your podcast.
Yeah.
But it's still a good market, and it's that's the fun part, finding things, and I really like doing this. I talked about my dad too. His philosophy always was, do what you love and the money will follow. And because you like what you're doing, then it's not really a job. And that's how I feel about this. It's just kind of fun. Mm-hmm. And that's always worked for me.
Yeah. When you were doing the art history and working at the museum.
I like that too.
You did what you loved.
I did. I loved.
How did the money follow?
It didn't really follow. That's the kind of job that you do because you like it, but it doesn't really pay that well. Mm-hmm. And so you have to find something else to supplement with. Yeah.
And real estate is something that you have to take seriously, but you can do it on the side when you have a full-time job.
Yeah, you can. Mm-hmm. You can.
Because I know I certainly started when I had a full-time job.
You certainly can.
And you certainly did too.
And even, and really with my wife's situation, it is like another full-time job. Mm-hmm. Again, last night, a boiler went out somewhere. At least I know someone I can call to get the, plumbers out there and furnace guy to get that working again.
You mean call your management company?
Right. So I know I can text the management company.
So all right. So I have to ask, if you have a management company, why are you even getting that call in the first place?
Well, I shouldn't get the call. Most people don't know who I am. One of the tenants knows me. And of course called me, hey, there's water in the basement. I'm like, oh. But I'm glad he found it, Uh-huh. So then I could text them. Normally I wouldn't even know what happened till I see the bill and go, what happened? But in that case, I did get the call. Mm-hmm. So
it was a fluke.
A good question, because normally I won't even know what happened. So
I make a point to hopefully never get those types of calls.
Right. And that was a hard turnover for a while. When we turned everything back over again, then they knew who we were. You can't pull in a parking lot without somebody coming and wanting or needing something. So now nobody knows. I can stop by, check things out, maybe pick up some trash or something, and no one's going to bother me.
Yeah. So it's good. The luxury of being anonymous.
Yeah.
When you go to your properties, which is always a good thing. Let's talk a little bit more about your multifamily or just really your acquisitions in general, because you're still acquiring. You've been acquiring since 1995. Yeah. What do you look for? What's your acquisition criteria?
Sometimes I don't know until I pull up and look at it. I know it's a strange thought, but you almost can get a good feeling or a vibe from a house when you pull up. Or is somebody going to want to rent this house? And I will look it over, and I'll have a feeling right away when you walk up. Either it's the neighborhood or something about the house. And if the day goes by and the next day I'm not thinking about it anymore, probably not worth buying. If I'm still thinking, hey, that was a nice house, then it's probably a good purchase. There's so much else going on in life. If that one flies out of my mind and it's not on the radar anymore, we probably shouldn't be buying it.
What kind of things might distinguish it as something that you'd still be thinking about the next day?
Oh, maybe how it looked, or something I'm like I'd mentioned on US, if I'm in my mind going through and making a checklist, okay, that needs to get painted. We could change that over there. It needs a roof. It's got about 5 years on it. If I'm mentally making my checklist of what that house needs, it's like a realtor says when they're showing a house somebody, if they're mentally moving their furniture in, you got a buyer. It's like that. I have my checklist of what that house needs. Okay. And I'm still kind of brewing on it. And it's probably a good purchase.
That's a good sign.
Yeah.
That means it's struck a chord with you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
That probably indicates that it's something you're going to be interested in.
Right. And then I'm kind of reviewing, in my mind too, that needs a lot more than I thought it did. My mind's still working on it.
What's your ratio of like when you think about a property the next day and you're going through that checklist, what's the ratio of thinking about it to actually buying it?
We probably buy 25% we look at, because I'm not going to go even look if I don't think it's a possibility. And one we bought a couple months ago in Muskegon as well. That one I bought immediately. It was perfect. I didn't even think. It was like I didn't even tell no brainer. We'll take it.
And a no brainer is what? Are you looking at the numbers? You're looking at the property? I mean,
both. Price was great. Someone had already refurbished it. I mean, it's and I know better, but I still get sucked in by glistening wood floors, and then something that's all painted and ready to rent. There's something very appealing about that.
Have you ever gone through this process, bought something, and then regretted it?
Yeah, a few things. Not regretted so much that we couldn't make something of it in the end, but it wasn't as good a purchase as it should have been. And we bought a house in Muskegon again about a year ago that maybe we have too much money into, but still a good house. Like I mentioned, that's one that we could sell again if we had to.
So is that one you bought it, you thought maybe you'd have to put a certain amount in, but you ended up putting more?
It needs a little more, and it was just that, well, it again, probably worth the price, but not the normal numbers we're used to. So
it didn't meet your 2%.
It does not meet
reality,
the 2%. No, it did not meet
2%.
that. I got sucked in by this, cute brick house, and it happens to everybody. Even when I totally know better going in, it happens. So.
Well, tell me what happened. What happened that ended up costing more than it should have?
Needed a new boiler. It needed just some refurbishing that I didn't expect, and it just didn't bring in the rent that I thought it might. I just was a little off my numbers. Nothing bad. We've never made a complete blunder because we try to go through some checklist.
What about multifamily? Are you still looking at multifamily? Or I don't really know that there's much.
There's
out
nothing
there
to look
right
at, and nothing at least nearby to look at. So no, just because if something came up, possibly. The last multifamily I looked at was maybe 2 years ago, and the numbers kind of worked, but weren't quite there, and we just haven't really found anything to look at since.
Let's talk a little bit about how your investment philosophy has changed throughout the years, because you've had a lot of ups and downs. I mean, more so than a lot of people have.
Yeah.
Talk about that and how it affects the way you look at your real estate.
Okay. In the beginning, times were good, late 90s, early 2000s. We could buy property, 20% down. And that was our only thought process. We were just worried about getting more property, enough cash flow I could live off of, and building a portfolio. And we didn't worry about payoff times, anything in the future. As things started to go downhill, like I mentioned, 2006, we started to think about our loan to value maybe should be a little lower, so we could weather those storms. And as we came out of it, well, of course, then my wife getting sick and all these things changed what we were going to do. Our philosophy now is we try to keep a 50 to 60% loan to value. And with that, whatever might happen, we're going to have enough cash flow that we could weather any storm that would hit.
So with that 50 to 60, let me just make sure I understand, because by keeping the lower, more conservative loan to value, it lowers your mortgage payment. Your loan payment every month.
It does.
Which then means if you have to drop rents to be competitive, you're still going to be able to meet your loan payment.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. And still have some cash flow.
Right.
On
and
top of that.
Of course, but we're with our principal payments, we're still paying off quite a bit. Right now, rent increases have been really good the last few years. Our principal paying off, we're always going to, be dipping below that number, and she'll put money back in. So that's why we're always looking for things to buy to keep us in that 50 to 60% loan to value.
So is your goal, or one of your goals anyway right now, to pay down your properties as much as you can so that you get to the point where you own them all free and clear as soon as possible?
Yeah, that always was the goal, but we always see things that would be good to buy too. So 50%, that's going to keep it where we can have good cash flow at that for long term. Yes, it'd be great long term just to pay them off and have that cash flow, but I know what's going to happen. Then we'd have more money than we need kind of sitting there, and I'd want to buy something else because I do enjoy buying it and I enjoy making something out of it.
So how do you make sure you have funds at the ready to buy the next deal that comes along?
Okay, well, I have a good answer for that. So our commercial loan has grouped the 3 large buildings together that we have. And they're all tied to each other in a loan. That makes sense for a bank to do that. We were looking for, with all that equity sitting there and nowhere to get it out of, we talked to our banker and he said, well, why don't we just spin this building off of it, call it free and clear, and do a line of credit against that building. And so we did that recently, and that freed up a chunk of cash that we could buy things with, for very low cost. And it's not necessarily a line of credit but a locked rate line of credit that after 12 months will become a loan. And that was a great, creative financing idea the bank came up with.
So, that's very creative.
Yeah.
So you had 3 properties that you grouped together, 3 apartment or multifamily buildings that you grouped together in a loan, but because your loan to value was so low, you were able to just pull one of those out,
right,
and essentially call it free and clear.
Right.
You got a line of credit that you're not really paying interest on until you tap into it, right?
Right. Interest only for a year, and then interest and principal when it locks in. So we have a year to purchase things with this chunk of money, and then he's like, well, still we can renegotiate that too, but it's
you don't use, you can always go back and renew a different line of credit.
Right. So I thought that was great, and still that was certainly wasn't even 50% of the amount of the worth of that building. So we could always negotiate more. And we thought if something really great came up for us to invest in, we could, flip that around or maybe stick that on the other loan that had, some equity left in it too. It puts us in a great position. And that's, again, keeping that loan to value low gives you all sorts of options if something comes up.
How did you, are you working with a particular bank that you were able to just kind of package all this together, pull that property out, get a line of credit? Because it's a lot of work to get a line of credit from a bank.
We've been working with Chemical Bank for a number of years now. I don't know, 10 plus years.
Okay.
And had a good relationship with them.
So they're the ones who packaged the 3 properties together in the first place, gave you the loan on that, allowed you to pull the one property out, call it free and clear, and give you the line of credit.
Right, which was a good idea.
Yeah, it's good to have a good banking relationship to be able to do that kind of thing.
It is. We've, over the years, on a commercial loan, you have to, revisit every 5 years. You can't get any better than that. But we keep ending up with them again. And having that long-term relationship allows you to quickly work through deals like this. You're right. It's good to have a good relationship with a good banker.
So give me a little bit more detail then on this line of credit. I assume, first of all, you're using that money to buy the single families in Muskegon that you've been purchasing.
We are.
What kind of terms do you have on the line of credit?
So again, just tied to the equity in that one building. And how it worked is we could get up to $250,000 without any appraisals or much paperwork. I think the loan ended up costing, with the fees, it was supposed to be $2,000, but I think it ended up to be about $1,500, a little less than that in the end. Wow. And it's like a construction loan where you have this chunk of money.
A bridge loan?
It wasn't a bridge loan, but say you could have you can spend up to this amount for this time period, and at that point it locks into, I think it was 4%. So we can end up with a 4% loan of up to $250,000.
So you already have a fixed rate once it locks in.
Right, it's all set to go, and we did that a few months back. So still a good rate as things start to increase. So that was a great way to get a loan on that property. Now I think the property value of that was $730. So, again, the loan to value for them is quite low against that property at only about third.
Yeah, so it's very low risk for them
right.
on a property that they're still in first position on.
Right.
So let's look at that. You're paying, once you lock it in, you're paying 4% on that money you're borrowing.
Right.
And you're not, by the way, you're not paying 4% on $250,000. You're only paying 4% on the money that you're actually using out of that line of credit.
Right.
Now, you're buying single families in Muskegon.
Right.
What kind of cap rate are you getting on those?
It's funny because I don't even think about the cap rate, which is funny because most people do.
Well, let's take one of your properties. You're just looking at the single families in Muskegon.
Okay.
What do you have into the typical single family between acquisition and fix-up cost?
It depends. They're all a little different. Let's say one we bought for about 25. I think we have maybe 42 or something into the house when it's done, and it's renting for about $850. Well, there's our 2%.
There's your 2%. So
on that house, we went back through the credit union and got a loan back. The house appraised for about 70 something, and we got a loan back for, I think it was a 70% loan, or 30% loan to value. So we got almost the money back. I don't even remember the numbers in my head anymore, but we get almost all the money back on the house. I had mentioned earlier we did that.
Okay,
that was the house we didn't even use this other loan for.
You took it the next step. Then you got a new loan on it.
Right,
paid yourself back. So now
those houses we just used our cash for.
Yeah. So basically, that's an infinite return. That's what I always like to call infinite return.
It is an infinite return.
Because now any money you make in cash flow, even though you've got a loan on it, any money you make in cash flow is just gravy.
Yeah,
I mean, because you no longer have any money of your own into this property.
No, and that's the same thing we did before. That little trick is getting harder to do.
Yes.
In fact, almost impossible to do now. That house and another one we bought around the same time in Muskegon, maybe a year and a half ago. Once we got that in place, the bank's like, we're not doing these anymore. We had the paperwork started, and other banks aren't doing that either.
Do you have an example of one that you haven't put a loan on yet?
Yeah, a house, again, one in Muskegon we bought a couple months ago, and then we paid, that's one I think I mentioned earlier, we paid $29 for it.
$29, okay.
And we haven't done anything with it yet. We just paid for it, and we haven't decided what to do with it yet, because we'd have to wait a year to get money back for that.
Do you have a tenant in it?
Yeah, it's all rented.
So you paid $29. You didn't really have to put any money into fixing it up.
Well, it needed a new garage door opener. And,
okay, so let's say you have
stove, whatever.
Let's say you have $30,000.
Right, exactly. It didn't much.
What kind of rent you getting from it?
$695.
$695. You're right around $8,400 a year.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what I'm getting at here, because if you're getting $695 times 12 months, it's $83,400. What's a typical expense ratio on one of your on a single family?
We pay. Let's say I think we're paying 6.5% on our fees, but that's because so many properties. Typically, it's 8%. Let's say for most people, it's 8%, just for the management.
You mean
fee.
just for So between management,
and then taxes, management fee, we put aside 3 to 5%.
Yeah, you're not paying utilities.
No.
Let's just be conservative and say 50% expense ratio. Let's just see what happens there, divided by 2. So,
I know what the number should be at the end, so we can write that.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, because with multifamily, it's real easy for me to say your typical expense ratio is going to be around 50% if the tenants are paying their own utilities.
Yeah.
55% if you're paying the utilities.
Right.
Single family, you're going to have a little better expense ratio because the tenants are paying all the utilities and the snow and everything. Yeah. But you're still going to have the maintenance, the management, the taxes, the insurance.
Right.
So let's just use 50%. So that's $4,170 in your pocket.
That's right.
Because you paid cash. There's no mortgage. Divided by the $30,000 gives you 14% return.
Okay.
So 14% cap rate. So I guess what I was getting at in the first place was you're borrowing, that line of credit you have is locked in at 4%.
Right.
So you're paying 4% on that $30,000 you borrowed, but you're making 14% off of it. So you're really making, at least 10% return on that money.
Right.
Well, that's a good return. Pretty good. Yeah.
And these are the, I didn't come prepared with stuff, but that stuff we showed the banker. He's like, wow. You're kind of shocked that you can get that return.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good for you. So that's a typical
That's pretty
single
typical.
family.
Yeah.
Except for the one that you were able to put new leverage on.
That
and
wasn't
now
that typical.
It's an
But-
infinite return. So
Yeah.
that's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why we're still looking at those. And other people are, looking at it more and more all the time. You remember those are the deals that we had here in Grand Rapids, not that long ago.
Better deals than that. I
Yeah,
mean, in
I-
Grand Rapids, it was in 2010, 2011. You could buy duplexes for $15,000.
Yeah.
And now you couldn't buy them for under 100.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I know.
Yeah, that is. Now, that's not to say that just because you buy it at a low price, you're going to make a lot of money off of it.
No.
Because I certainly bought some properties at a very low price and did not make a lot of money.
That's a great thing to talk about because these numbers look great, but if you don't or you aren't careful about it, you can still lose money. And,
Yes.
That's where people just getting into this business can't think about it as instant income because it just doesn't work that way. Even though the cash flow looks great, something always happens. A boiler goes or a furnace goes or something is going to eat up your income. A tenant walks out or leaves a mess. Some downturn.
Tree falls on the roof.
or whatever. Something always happens. It just does.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have more, you can kind of ride things out. But
Yeah, in my case, I had a 4-unit. I paid $21,500 for it in 2009, 2010, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I was lucky if I broke even on that property while I owned it because the city came along, made me put siding on it.
Yeah.
We had all kinds of turnover costs. Just you name it. I mean, it happened to this property. So I was able to sell it and make a profit, but I certainly did not get the cash flow I would have expected from buying a property for that cheap.
Right. And that's a good lesson is the income might not be immediate. It's going to be down the road.
Yeah.
So.
Don't think. Yeah. And this is something I was listening to another podcast today, and someone had bought. I don't know. It was a 24 unit or something. In a year, they had amassed 24 units, and that might sound really impressive. Like, great, you have 24 units. Wow, you can quit your job. You can go out. You go to the Bahamas. No, that's not true. You have 24 units. Maybe on paper it looks like you have a high net worth or a higher net worth, but in reality, you're still nursing that thing along to get the cash flow and get the value up. You're nowhere near being able to quit your job.
That's true. No, assets or even net worth at the end isn't going to give you, the cash flow each month to live on. So that's true.
Yeah, you can't live off your net worth.
No, looks nice on paper, but it's not going to do a lot for you.
You can use it to help you, buy assets that will give you cash flow and throw off passive income. But your net worth on paper and your portfolio really isn't an indication of how well you're doing.
It's true.
Yeah. Now you, on the other hand, you bought your first 24 units and you had cash flow that equaled your job income.
Right. And that was, again, that first purchase, we, made offers for 6 months on it, trying to get the price down. So we did buy it at a good price. Again, that building on Michigan Street. Mm-hmm. And the next 12 unit, we also bought at a good price. And they both needed some work. So there's a lot of sweat equity that went into those. But that gave us cash flow, And that's, again, like I said, if you purchase it correctly in the beginning, so you can add some equity to it or have it appraised more later so you can use that to leverage something or have a good exit strategy, something else than just I liked it and I bought it, you can make some money or you can lose some money.
Yeah.
It happens that first day.
It's not that hard to make money in real estate investing, but if you don't know what you're doing or if you're not looking at the big picture, you will lose money. Mm-hmm. So do you have any horror stories?
One fun maintenance story. We had a boiler that boiled itself out. There should be a safety on there. It didn't. So it got so hot that the boiler the hot water heater, it was a commercial hot water, sent hot water back through all the pipes. This building has 16 units in it, where it sent boiling water all the way back into the toilets. It was so hot that it went back up the cold return and sent hot water everywhere. People are flushing toilets. They were cracking.
Oh my
And this
gosh.
was the middle of the night. And of course, we're out there, what in the heck happened? Nobody could figure out what happened. We had one unit actually the same building, where there was a fire contained in that unit, totally, burned that unit out and didn't do a whole lot of damage that was around it, which is nice. But, we've had, the fires, the exploding boiler. No, I don't.
That's the exploding boiling toilets. That's a new one.
That was a new one. I'd never seen it before or after, so that was weird.
So as we wrap it up here, Steve, I've got just a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
What would you have done differently looking back on those 22 years?
Okay. We probably would have had professional help through the whole thing. You think about paying your 8 to 10% to someone to manage a property or take care of the calls that come in. That would have been better than us doing it ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So you wish you hadn't tried to do it all yourself?
Well, we hadn't done all of our own painting, all of our done everything.
Do you regret doing any of it, or do you still think that there was room for you to do some of it?
The thing is, we learned a lot doing that. I know enough where I know if someone's doing something wrong, and maybe that's a rite of passage in this business to know how to do those things. But looking back, having professional help and hiring those things out ends up costing less than you think it does when you figure your time into it.
What do you think you did right?
We purchased right. We waited it out, make good offers and purchase things correctly. And that allowed the whole thing to go better through the years. So we were careful with the numbers.
Looking forward, where we are now, we're recording this in January of 2017. Where do you see your investing going from here?
From what I see at the moment, we'll probably invest more in probably Muskegon at this point, not much more in Grand Rapids, as prices are kind of high here to make money.
So you like Muskegon as a growth market? Huh?
Yeah, I do. I do see that. Probably hang on to what we have here in town. I may even sell a couple things that we bought during the downturn, which are worth 2-3 times what we paid for it. Maybe put that capital or that money somewhere else. One thing or not, there's good cash flow in those too. Mm-hmm. So that's what I could see changing now. Maybe going into other markets that are still growing. If I can still get my 2%, but if I can still do it.
Well, good luck.
Thank you. And thanks for having me. It was fun.
Well, thank you for sitting down and talking with me. I appreciate you taking the time.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.